Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to take a um, plain text header and use some color sampling um, and some text effects in Photoshop to make a slightly improved header that has customized text and colors that are sampled from an image. So this is what it'll end up looking like. This is where it starts with this plain, boring, uh, black and white CSS header. Um, so your starter will start with this, and the first thing I'm gonna do is just really actually there isn't that much to change. Um, actually, this text, the header, the name of the cafe, will be replaced with instead of actually using text, it will be an image file that's sort of stylized text created in Photoshop. And then some of the colors, instead of just plain black and white, will be really dark and really light colors that are sampled from this image below to just kind of help it blend a little bit better. Um, so, so the reason for having to do all this is that basically if you want really stylized text, anything other than just plain text, um, you're going to have to create that text yourself because you never know if a browser is going to be able to support a particular font or a particular style um, that you're trying to accomplish if you're trying to do interesting looking text in CSS. And some effects might just not be possible at all in CSS. It might just be something that you can do in Photoshop, or I'm just going to use Photopea because I'm in my browser. But it might be something that you have to use editing software like photo editing software or graphic design software to accomplish, and there's no way a browser is going to be able to reproduce it. Something like a logo. So I'll show you um, how to use some text effects and how to um, make sure that your color selections blend pretty well with everything else in your page, and how to make sure it sits correctly on the page. So let's go ahead and get started. Um, so I already have my image here. This will be the starter image that I give you, imported into Photopea, and I don't really need to do anything with this, but I'm using it to sample colors. I've already done this, but I selected all, so I have selected the whole image, and then I took the eyedropper. You can see I already have a bunch of color swatches up here in my swatches tab. All I did was like sample like white. It's really kind of an off-white, a black that's really kind of an off-black, just barely off-black and just barely off-white, which will look a little bit better than plain black and plain white for using it with text. If you think about really like if you read something on paper, for example, the paper isn't like 100% white, and the ink isn't going to be 100% black. It's like a little bit off white, a little bit off black. It's a little bit easier on the eyes than 100% contrast. So I'll use these sort of just maybe somewhat more natural light and dark tones, and then I'll grab like you could also grab like a dark brown or a light brown from the wood in this on this floor, and I'm just gonna grab a sort of gold color from this lettering. I'm actually gonna use that in my lettering um, when I create my logo. Try one more sample, just see if I can get something different looking. I have a lighter and a darker option. So now what I'll do is I'll create a new project in Photopea. I'm just going to make this, doesn't have to be that big. I'll make it 400 pixels by 100 pixels. I'll use my text tool. And type out my text. So, you can adjust the positioning. It really isn't going to matter that much. You want it to be loosely centered. I mean, down to the pixel isn't going to be that big of a deal. But you do want it to be pretty, somewhat centered. I've already been doing an example of this, so I already have my size set to a pretty appropriate size for what I'm trying to do here. 72 pixels was pretty good. And later we're going to hide the background, but let's change the background over to the color that the real background is going to be. I guess you could leave the background in if the colors match, but I'll probably make the background transparent just so that this would be something reusable anywhere. But in particular, I want to see how it's going to look with this dark off black. So I'm going to just select that, make that my color, choose the background with that active color, paint bucket in the background. So you can see that kind of gold color. It goes pretty well with black. I could test out. Do I have? Let's see what other shades I have. I could try a lighter shade. Yeah, I like that one even better. So I think I'll go with that lighter shade of gold. And from this point, what I want to do is add some more visual effects. So I'll right click on the layer. So right now my text layer that says Dream Cafe, I'm going to right click on that layer, click blending options. And with for the blending in this, that brings up this menu. There's other ways to access this, but there's kind of like 4 ways to do everything in Photoshop. That's my preferred way to bring up this menu because it's simple. But anyway, it brings up this layer style menu, and you can change all kinds of different visual effects. But the things that I find most useful for text include bevel and emboss, stroke, shadow, like inner shadow, and drop shadow. I mean, all of these could be potentially useful. You kind of just have to experiment with them until you really know what they all do. But bevel and emboss usually are pretty useful. So if you just take a look at the text, it's just flat right now. And if you turn on bevel and emboss, it starts to give it some texture. It looks more three-dimensional. So let me click on bevel and emboss. So if you click on the tab for that effect, you can bring up options. You can increase the depth of the effect so it looks like the extra sort of the extra texture that it adds looks like it's set in even deeper, or it pops out even farther. And I ended up settling on 250 depth and 2 pixels size. That was just for an inner bevel. There are a lot of different options. I mean, like in this case, outer bevel seems to look kind of stupid. A lot of the other options seem to look kind of stupid, so I'm going to stick with an inner bevel. And in a lot of situations, stroke and shadow can look good, but in this case, adding a line around the outside of this text really isn't going to do much good. I mean, you can see it just doesn't seem like it would make much sense. I mean, even if the color selection was better. Let's just see what happens, but I don't see this working out. Yeah, I mean, it looks cheesy like that. I'm not going to leave this. No matter what I do. Yeah, no stroke. Right, but you can kind of experiment with different effects and see what happens, see what you like. Sometimes drop shadow can look really cool. I've already tried it with this. It's not going to look cool. It's going to look dumb. So I'm not going to keep it there. But sometimes in other situations, drop shadow can look cool. In this case, I'm just going to leave my bevel, and that's kind of going to be it. So I have a more textured gold text. It looks kind of like it's a little bit three-dimensional, has shiny bits. That's what I was going for. So I'm going to leave it that way. Now I want this to be something that I could kind of put anywhere, even over something other than black. So I'm going to hide the background, and when I export this, it'll just be, I'll make it a transparent PNG. So File, export as PNG, and I'm not going to save. You should save. I'm not going to because I already have a copy of this. I've already done this once before. And so back in my REPL, now I can upload that file. And then in place of my boring H1, I'll instead put an image. Which is my cafe logo image. And you'll notice, first of all, if you run this, that the logo is gigantic and it grows kind of out of control. I mean, maybe if this is what you're going for, a liquid layout with a full screen logo on top, then that would be great, but I kind of don't really want that because it gets to be absurd when it goes full screen. So I'm not going to keep that. I'm going to have to make some changes to my CSS. Looks like I didn't upload my main image yet, so I should do that as well. There, that's looking better. All right, so now back over in my CSS, I just need to make a few changes. First of all, the black and white. It's a small change, but it will make a difference. It will make a subtle difference if you set the colors to your sampled colors. So instead of pure black, I'm going to go with slightly off black. I'll just copy that from the color picker here. I'll copy the hex value. And then wherever it says black, I right click, change all occurrences. Oh, I missed that. Highlight. Change all occurrences and actually just paste. If I paste in one, it'll paste everywhere. I messed that up though. Let me undo. I gotta make sure the hash is there. 0C, 0C, 0A. All right, and then for white, similarly, I'll use this sampled color. Slightly off white. It's a really subtle difference, and I think on nicer displays it is also more noticeable because it'll display finer differences in colors. But I think sometimes it matters using like a little bit off white and then a little bit off black instead of black and white. But also, really got to deal with this oversized picture. So what I'm going to do with that is right now the way it's styled is all images are 100% width. That's a bit much for that particular image, which is in the header. So I'm just going to say header img. Let's just fix its width. It doesn't have to be. It can just be 400 pixels. It doesn't have to be any bigger than that. Did I not put that in my header? Yeah, it is. Header img. That was dumb. Width. There we go. All right, so now you can see one problem we're facing is its size is fixed. That seems about right. And the problem though is that it's sticking to the left. So that is because before it was an H1 and our H1 has text align center. Now we should just probably do that for the entire header so that content inside the header is text align center. Text align center. Now the whole header will be aligned center. And there it is. So just a simple sort of landing page for a restaurant with some color sampling and a custom header. But it's pretty useful to be able to create your own fonts, create your own images, create your own logos and things, and bring them into your designs. So hope you found that useful. See you next time.